Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. Today, I'm sitting down with the lovely Kim Kelty, CEO of the Kelty Method. Kim is a personal brand consultant and podcast producer who partners with small business owners and entrepreneurs to enhance their personal branding and podcast production. She specializes in bringing the in-person work, success, and voice of her clients to life on a digital scale. Now, Kim and I were introduced by some of the mutual advisors that we work with as we both contract in different marketing roles with the same financial planning firm, Legacy Planning. We immediately hit it off, and we were even more delighted to find out that we actually live just 20 minutes away from each other in Colorado. So Kim and I recently had the pleasure of grabbing coffee together in person, and I have to say it was so refreshing to be able to connect with someone in a physical space rather than a virtual one for a change. Now, in this episode, Kim is sharing her expertise on personal branding and how financial advisors and coaches can effectively market themselves, leaning into a personal brand. She dives into the importance of defining your unique value proposition with tips on how to do that. She also offers strategic tips for repurposing your content across multiple platforms. And like me, she emphasizes the need for gradual platform expansion and not trying to do everything under the sun at once. Kim also discusses how to attach ROI to your marketing efforts, even when it's challenging to see immediate conversions, especially for a lot of that top of funnel marketing activity that happens on social media platforms or through blog posts or podcasting or things like that. This conversation is packed with actionable insights that will help you build a standout personal brand, engage your audience, and ultimately grow your business, which is what we all want to do. So whether you're just starting your marketing journey or you're looking to refine your existing strategy, Kim's advice will provide you with the tools and confidence to take your marketing to the next level. So without further ado, let's jump in. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it was so great to connect with you. I don't know if it was last week or the week before and find out we're both located in Colorado. We both work for one of the same financial advisory firms. I mean, it's just so fun to connect with other marketers like you.
I know it's such a small world. And when I think it was the end of our conversation, you're like, wait, you are 10, 15 minutes away from me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pleasure.
Unbelievable. Well, I would love to start if you would just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and kind of how you serve businesses.
Yeah. So from like starting from zero, like, so when I was born, no,
As far back as you want to go.
yeah, we will get bad dad jokes along the way, hopefully very much way. So I started in digital marketing back in about around 2013, 2015, between that range, kind of dabbling into it. And then when I got into it, I worked with a guy out in California for 4 years, and we helped brick and mortars in the fitness industry get online. And so they had, more of a concept of trading time for money and within their business model and trying to figure out ways that they could, be a little bit more duplicatable and getting online. So back then, yes, obviously internet was of value and social media was there, but it was still not really dabbling in like how to really market yourself with that. So I started there and I worked with him for 4 years. And so I say that I attest my digital marketing degree to that because I graduated with a sports management degree. Sports slightly worked within it, but definitely not to the extent that I think my degree came out of. And from there, I just really started to see this whole, so to speak, of, that there's organic branding, there's paid approach, there's ghostwriting, all these different ways that we could do it. And my niche really started to go to how can I help small business owners and entrepreneurs get online efficiently and effectively, and be able to get an actual ROI from it and establishing what that ROI is. Some people just merely being able to show up on LinkedIn, once a week. Some other people was, all right, let's, be able to get our website to a place that it has a pulse. And then slowly but surely, I started to look at the assets of a business and say, okay, here's your website, to your LinkedIn, to your YouTube. How can we fill in these holes to be able to create an organic approach to be able to, work with someone like you and actually have some really good messaging and content being put out there. And then of course being able to expand to different platforms like YouTube and podcasting and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey because I started into social media management and it just really evolved to more of this brand consulting, organic branding, and then podcast production. So it's been
Mhm.
fun and really just trying to see what sticks, and this has been sticking for a while.
I love that. And I would love to circle back to something you said first, which is this notion of kind of attaching ROI to your marketing efforts, whether it's efforts that you're doing yourself, thinking about your time and the energy and time that you're putting into your own marketing, or if you're outsourcing your marketing. And a lot of times, what I see with my clients is they are outsourcing a lot of that top of funnel building stuff, like creating LinkedIn posts, writing blogs to get traffic to their website and things like that. And while that stuff is absolutely important, it doesn't often directly result in, new client relationships and new business and things like that.
Yeah.
And so what approach have you taken to help people kind of think about the ROI?
It's so funny because when I started, I had a one track mind on it in the sense of we do a service together, you get clients, and it has to be in this certain time frame. Like I was very rigid. And then
Mm,
I started to kind of see where a lot of clients, specifically in the financial industry, it's not to say that they didn't want clients. That is definitely not at all. But they said, well, I just kind of really need to work up to even kind of on putting myself out there, putting my business out there. Yes,
mhm,
I can hide behind the business through a website and our business like LinkedIn page. And so I would establish the ROI and say, okay, in the next 30 days, what would you like to accomplish based off of everything I'm saying we're doing? And a lot of them would say, I just want to be able to consistently show up on these calls. And so it
mm,
kind of started there. And then, all right, we looked at the 90 days and it said, okay, by this time, I want to be able to have not only a consistent strategy that's going out for video or content or website, um, but I also want to be able to be having, 3 to 5 conversations with new people. And so,
mhm,
because I was always more about, okay, ROI is a conversion. And I know
right.
in our industry that's really hard, right? It's hard to say, okay, we do a service and then we are converting 3 to 5 clients coming through. And then, of course, looking at the client that you're working with and saying, okay, what's the actual live or what's the actual time frame of when you meet a client to actually converting them? And some of them was 12 months to 24 months. And so
Oh,
my goal started to be, okay, if you're saying 12 to 24 months, all right, can we look at it between 12 to 6 months that you're having this? And so when I looked at more or less their strategy, I would say, okay, it's what it used to be 7 to 10 exposures for someone to say yes. Now it's like probably like I think it's in the 30s.
yeah.
So it's like, okay, how can we get them to a quote unquote quicker yes? And it's just being able to create these more of these digital assets and having these touching points everywhere. And so I started to really look at it in a 3-part tier where I said, okay, your top tier, and for most of the clients that I work with, your top tier is word of mouth and referral. Great.
Mhm,
We're going to still continue to nurture that. How are we going to nurture that in the digital space? All right. So the website email was typically their second tier because there was a little bit more to a warm to a hot presence there.
mhm,
And then the third being their LinkedIn strategy. And I looked at LinkedIn and I said, okay, this is our low hanging fruit, aka maybe the low man on the totem as well, in the sense of conversion of your clients and an ROI. But it's our vehicle to be able to nurture all these things. So, for example, if we're going to write a piece of content with Hillary, can we, and it's going to be on our website and our LinkedIn, can we put together a video series based off it that, yes, it lives on LinkedIn, yes, it lives on website, but is it something that you could send to a client after you said you've had X, Y, and Z conversation as an extension of you, and you're
mm.
still with them virtually 24/7?
I
And so,
love this.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I geek out on it, and it's hard because I would love to live in a space, and I don't know what your thoughts on this, like, where it's like, yes, I do this for you, and you get 5 clients from it, and it's just not always the reality, especially if it's not a paid approach. And the paid approach, even that's even harder because it's like you are very much guaranteeing that, and if you don't convert that, it's like, oof.
Yeah. No, it's something that I have struggled with since I started my business, right? And I think that in financial services, one of the reasons that it's so hard to attach ROI to, one piece of content or 1 month's worth of content or whatever it may be is because the client relationship between advisor and client is so personal. It's so vulnerable. It
Mm,
takes people a long time, like you said, maybe 30 touch points, right? To even feel comfortable reaching out to this person for a free call, right? Or to get on their calendar with them. And so you do just have to have so many opportunities to create those touch points, and you can't point to a single one and say, "Oh, this is the one that like sealed the deal," right?
it's so funny. It's as if like I deny our services in a way. And I facetiously say that, but it's someone's like, oh my gosh, I wrote the content we put together. Someone reached out to me and talked to me about that, and he's like, it's all working, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's but it's a lot more than just that. They
Yeah.
probably heard you from John Smith and then went onto your website, looked at more of your LinkedIn presence, talked to John Smith again, and then saw that post and said, yes, I saw you from that post.
Right. And you can't get someone to say that to you, right? Like no one is going to be, they're not going to even connect the dots of like, yeah, I went to your LinkedIn presence, and because you had a LinkedIn presence, that's why I felt comfortable reaching out to you, things
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
I want to hear your viewpoints on this too, because a lot of the clients that we get to work with, they have a higher price point and commitment, and
Yeah.
also very, personal when it comes to their finances. Um, is they'll say, okay, so say for example, it's like a home improvement business. Just hypothetically, it's between $1,000 to $5,000 for a project. Obviously, probably even more too.
Right.
But they're running all these LinkedIn ads or these Facebook ads and et cetera, and they're getting conversions from it. And then say someone that has a minimum of, I just throwing up $10,000, whatever it may be, and they're not seeing the same results. But it's like, the way that I have looked at it is like, yes, it's not to say that ads can't work, etc., but it's a bigger price point and a bigger sell, and it's going to just take a lot more of a commitment and time consuming versus you open up Instagram and you're like, yes, I want that hat for $30. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier to kind of grow that. Like,
Right.
you have you experienced that kind of that insight with ROI?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, it's the bigger price point, it's the more vulnerable relationship. And then one other piece of it that I see kind of almost working against advisors and people like us who do their marketing is that there's not all, depending on the types of clients that they're serving, there's not always this immediate urgency that I need financial planning right now. It's really
Mhm.
easy for a lot of people to put off financial planning. Whereas with the home improvement project, it's something like, I want to get my bathroom remodeled and I want to do it this month. And then I know it's going to be done. And because financial planning is something that is a decades long process, or hopefully it
Till
should
death.
be,
Till death.
right, it's easier to put that off, and also to just say like, well, I'll always have time to do this down the road, I'll always have time to do this down the road, things like that. So I think that's one more thing that makes it even harder to actually like get those conversions.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's interesting because like I empathize with them, have compassion with it, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I want to get you to a quicker process too,
Yeah.
and make sure it's integral to what the product is and what the service
Yeah.
is, right?
Well, one thing that you said is also something that I always like to tell my clients is, okay, yes, this is marketing content for you, but how can we make this work for you in other ways? Because it is so difficult to attach, ROI when we're talking about conversions to a single piece of content. And one thing that I love about working with Jen, who is our mutual client, is that she's always thinking about from the perspective when we're coming up with topics for her blogs and her emails and things like that. She's thinking about, okay, what are things that I'll be able to send my existing clients when they're dealing with this particular life transition so that it maybe saves me some time from hopping on a call with them when I could just send them this great blog post that I have as well. And they can read it on their own time and get their answers. And then maybe when we do hop on a call, we can even have a deeper, more meaningful conversation because they have some foundation laid. And I just think that's such a great tip that you just shared, is to think about your marketing content. Like, how can I squeeze everything out of this piece of content possible?
Agreed. Like, I mean, I look at it always as like an octopus. So like the center of it being like Hillary's content.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, so yes, it's as a blog. And then, okay, other tentacle, it's an email. All right, other tentacle, is this something that you could say to a client or a prospect? Hey, I was thinking about you with our conversation. Here's some more further stuff on this. Like, let's talk about this in more in depth next time. And it's just because it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. It's like there's so much consumption out there, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I look at it as, if you're going to put the time and the energy into it, can we kind of give it a little bit more bandwidth and personalize it to the person? So yes, it's quote unquote general in the sense of a blog, but can we personalize it for John Smith, the most
Mm-hmm.
not personal name, but personalized name. But can we personalize that and get more value out of it? And also, I look at it as like, and things that you've worked with Jen on is like, okay, so here's a blog, but wait, is this good copy for the website? Like, is this a way that I can position some of the services that I have in a more approachable way versus I do this and it's more robotic when we see websites, and that's been a massive piece to it.
I love that.
Yeah, just kind of thinking out loud because I just had got off with a team call. So one of the things I do outside of working with the advisors is I like to work with the supporting advisors as a whole. And so maybe they don't want to create their own content plan because maybe it doesn't necessarily make sense, or that's not the best usage of their time right now. But taking Jen's piece of content, being able to share that and be able to support that, like, it just expands that digital footprint even more.
Yes. Yes. And that's what I love too. So I'd like to dive into a little bit about kind of what you do in terms of branding and strategy for branding and things like that. Can you start by just telling us, what is branding strategy? When you do branding and coaching on branding, what does that include and consist of?
It's so funny because if I ever thought that I would be like a strategist or a consultant, be like, no, that doesn't exist. Like, you're not doing anything.
Right.
So like I try not to lead with that foot. They're like strategists, like, yeah, that's great. People are just spending money just to do nothing. No, so I guess, I mean, of course there's a million different ways to describe it, and there's a million different ways to do marketing, but the way that I look at coming into, just say a Jen, for example, or just any of the advisors I get to work with is, okay, where I shared before, it's like, okay, let's look at all of your digital assets and where are you currently at?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense for me to say, okay, here's the plan. You're going to have this paid approach. You're going to do 5 to 7 posts a week. You're going to do video content, podcasts, and you're going to do all of this within the next 30 to 90 days. Most, if not all of my clients would have ran. And so I look at the strategy. I look at it in the sense of, okay, where are they first at? All right, great. Where do they want to go or think they want to go? Can I help fill in the holes there? And then create the plan off of it. And typically the plan really starts with the content. And so I start with, and similar to, I know something that you've done with Jen, I start with a brand clarity session. And through that session, typically they'll have a mission and a vision statement from their company. So I'll use that as a foundation and be like, but what is your mission and vision statement, especially with financial advisors? That yes, they are under a company's umbrella, which isn't great and it's support, but what makes you and your mission different than everyone else's?
Mm-hmm.
And so I go through those two entities and then I come up with, based off that, a brand one-liner. And that's more or less just seeing, okay, how can you describe who you are, in a couple, like 1 to 3 sentences. And then through that, I look at, okay, most of that conversation, I'm getting a ton of their brain dump and a conscious flow of like what they've been doing, what they're working on, what they want to work on. And I'd established at least 5 brand, not least, mostly just within that 5 range of brand pillars.
Mm.
That's where we can start to look at, okay, these are your brand pillars and how we're going to put stuff out there in the world. If it's content, content on the blog, or LinkedIn, or if it's video content, podcasts, or website, building. And then I take it from there and kind of just look at, okay, if we're going to do a content strategy, like let's look at in the sense of, yes, quality, but what's the quantity, and how can we create a variety. And so I have this thing that I've learned a million years ago, but the 3 E's of social media. So entertain, empower, and educate.
Mm.
Actually, them. Typically, I lead with education, empower, then entertainment. Education is typically for LinkedIn, especially, a lot easier for people to kind of lean into. But I don't recommend it. It's the only thing they lean into, because it could start to get really mind numbing.
Yeah.
And then empowerment, not necessarily meaning you need to be a motivational speaker, but especially with finances, what is your financial behaviors and like philosophies and mindset behind that? Because that's a lot of the conversations that they're working through. And then the third, entertainment, again, not necessarily being a comedian, so to speak, but can we, what are some things that you're doing that are out and about? So like, what are some of the engagements that you're speaking at? Yes, we could argue that's educational, but it is entertainment and positioning of authority. And so that's where I kind of, start out. And then I start to build up on that muscle. And like, one of the things, just had a conversation with a client right before this, and he said, should I be on other platforms? Because right now he's on LinkedIn. And I said, in short, yes. In long answer, my philosophy is get really great at one and be able to build up on the other. And I know it's cliche, but it doesn't make sense for us to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, podcast platform, all these things when you're really not able to even show up on one.
Right.
And so it just build up that muscle. All right, muscle is built. We're still going to maintain it, but now, okay, we're going to go put some efforts and learn some things over into Instagram. Like I look at it as like a graduation, so to speak. So long-windedly, that's how I start them with the strategy.
I love this. You shared so many kind of tangible examples to take this sort of nebulous, title, brand coach or brand strategist, and attach like some real actionable stuff to what it is that you help people with.
I struggle with not having tangibilities in my business, so to speak. And so the more I can get some tangibilities, the better, because in my, and it's something that I continue to work on, where someone's like, no, I'm just paying you for your brain. And I'm like, whoa, I have way too many limiting beliefs on that one. But thankfully, respectfully, but I internally, I'm like, what can I tangibly give them? Is that through like, just a playbook of what their strategy is? That through a content plan? Because I'm not a ghostwriter. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I love about what you do is like, you can take everything I just said and then create like a beautiful amount of content from it, where I can take everything I just said and lead them through a content strategy and help support them with creating that content. But I know that's not easy for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it is too. Content strategy is something that I also offer to my clients, and I think it's really helpful when you are a strategist to really help the client figure out what is realistic for you to do and what's realistic for you not to do. You see the ideal of if your marketing was firing on all cylinders, you see the ideal, but we don't always have the time to create the ideal ourselves, right? So figuring out what you can realistically do, whether that's just creating your own LinkedIn posts and then you outsource the other things that are a part of your content strategy. I think that's also such an important piece of it, because we still have to sleep, right? We still have to serve with and meet clients. That's what most financial advisors want to be doing with their time.
Yeah. And there's family, and then there may be a 3% of social life. Yeah, no, I agree.
Right. Some of us like to just, sit and read.
I know it is difficult. And it's interesting. Like when I shift, because when I worked for an employer, I was a ghostwriter. But once you start to when I wanted to expand more, I started to ask myself the same questions. Like, what do I actually want to do? And it wasn't ghostwriting anymore, but I created a system or a strategy, so to speak, or a framework where, and it's something actually I have on my website. It's just like a conscious brain dump, and I'm prompting them. So it's not just like, hey, just talk about your deepest, darkest secrets and everything you ate today, but it is less, okay, I'm going to prompt you on this. Don't act like this is a content piece. Don't act like this is what we're going to be doing for your video. Just get it all out. And I always kid, and it probably was true, I was dropped too many times as a child that my brain somehow makes sense of that. And
Yeah.
so I'm able to create it. And what's really cool, I know we had started talking about AI really briefly before we started the podcast. What's great is if you put a lot of those prompts and stuff in the AI, it does organize it in a pretty good way. And I will just disclaimer, don't just take that and just post it somewhere else. Like really look at it, because
Right.
for some odd reason they like to use the word delve a lot. At least the chat GPTs I've worked with, and I'm like, no one says the word delve like as often as you do. At least like maybe once every 3 years. But anyways, it is really helpful because it gets it really started, and you're doing already more than half the work, because not only are you prompting them to get them to a place that you want to create X, Y, and Z content, but you're also getting their tone down, which I don't think ChatGPT or any of the other ones get really well. And then you
Right.
can start to maneuver and make sense of it. And so that's been a really, really good, efficient way. And it's helped my business a lot because it takes the pressure off of them of trying to figure out how to create that content piece.
Yeah, I love that. I was just talking to an advisor yesterday actually about, how you can really use ChatGPT as a conversation partner to help you tease out, what's going to be most important to
Mm,
your audience and things like that. And I think the more that you interact with ChatGPT, if you, whether you build your own GPTs for your brand or whatever it might be, you can really teach it a lot about the things that you like to talk about, the things that your audience cares about. It can start to recognize your tone and your style and things like that. And so I think there's a lot you can do to, help ChatGPT go from giving you something that's 30% there and then you have to take it 70% to get it to 100.
yeah,
You can help it give you something that's closer to that 70%, but then you still have to take it the last 30%, right? And so I love ChatGPT for that reason, because I think it does help people who understand how to really use it create content a lot faster.
agreed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Now, one other thing that you do that I really love and appreciate is it sounds like you have a really good handle on helping advisors who maybe work under the umbrella of a larger firm create a personal brand for themselves that still aligns with the branding of their personal firm. How has that, I guess, how do you see that being an asset for both advisors and the firms that they work under?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. This is where you should never answer the question before it's finished, because I was like thinking of something. You know
Oh,
how they say, can you just actually listen and not think of how your response is going to be?
now I want to hear both though.
I know I have two tangents there. Because I was going to say it is one of my favorite. It is one of my favorite. It is my favorite part of what I do, and it was one thing I think, humbly speaking, was or transparently, was naive of me at first to
Mm.
say, oh, it's a benefit that I have no idea what you do. And the reason I said that is because I was able to come in and really see a lot of holes of, okay, yes, I understand this is the technical side of what you do, but this is actually what I think a lot of people want to hear about how you do it.
Mm.
And I wasn't so kind of for lack of a better term, like mudded with the waters of like, okay, we have to talk about succession planning, da, 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 da. Yes, we do, but can we find it in a different angle?
Mhm.
But now I've evolved with that, and I do know a lot more about their industry. I would never in a million years say I was an expert, but I understand kind of where we're going with it and how we can talk about it in a more effective way. But now kind of like looking at the benefits of the just looking at, say, the bigger firm, with legacy planning, who we get to work with Jen, and then the advisors within. Um, I guess that you've heard this a million times, and so I know I'm not saying anything differently, but it really is something to be noted, is that there are a million different kind of advisors out there, and anyone can go with anyone. And when it's something specifically with finances, where I believe it's one of the most, if not intimate things that people are working with, that they really need to understand who you are. And what I love about everyone that I get to work with is that they do that so well in person. And
Mm-hmm.
so my philosophy is I'm taking the in-person you and sharing that digitally, not the other way around, meaning if it's not happening in person, we do not share that digitally. It's not viable. And so we want to be integral to their in-person process, aka how they say, yes, I am with legacy planning, but not but, and this is how I am able to serve you. And this is what makes not only myself and my team different than any other firm. And so, one of the things that I love that they've inherited is that they really understand the pulse behind the brand. The brand is incredible. And yes, there's like brands like Apple. There's just so much recognition. Yeah, we can maybe not. No, actually, I'm going to rebuttal this. Like, Steve Jobs, like he was the pulse behind the brand, and it made it very unique. And just having just that persona out in the front really did individualize what the company was. And so, bringing it back to specifically with the firm and the advisors, I like to really just say to them, what makes you like unique? And I know that's simply put, and then being able to go exude that on digitally, because again, like I know I just said this, but they are doing it so well in person. I'm just trying to share that digitally in some sort. So.
Now, one thing that I've heard advisors say, and I'm curious if you've heard this as well. I always ask, advisors this question. So what makes you different from the next advisor? What makes you unique? How do you do things differently? And I've heard advisors, really struggle to answer this question. Not all of them by any means, but some really do. They're like, I actually don't know what I do
Mhm.
that's different. Have you ever had conversations like that with the advisors? Yes.
Every single one of them, every single client I have. Gosh, I was like, I wish I had that humbleness.
I know.
I'm like, where do you want me to start? I was like, no, and I think that's what is great about you and I is that we are able to pull that out from them. And
Yeah.
so, yes, hit them with the uncomfortable question, but at the same time, it definitely plants the seed. And so, I guess I have found why it's been hard for them to answer it is because they are so much of a servant mentality
Mm,
that it's like, no, it's not about me. It's about the client. I'm like, yes. And the client needs to trust you. And there is a unique reason of why they trust you. It's
yeah.
not just because you're so good at what you do, because there's other people that are also so good at what you do. And so, like, for example, like I have some clients that have just like very morbid sense of humors and just like very like sarcastic. And that is something that their clients love. And I have other ones that are just are able to be extremely empathetic and compassionate to the process and not no questions dumb. And
Mm,
so it is like I think it's the one thing that you didn't ask for a recommendation, but I would say one thing I always recommend to them is go ask 2 to 3 people within your professional setting and personal setting, and just say like what makes me unique,
yeah.
and just go. And one of the philosophies I really lean on is like, it's not to say like I don't really love fake it till you make it, but it kind of I guess relates to in the sense of um, lean on the people that believe this in you until you're able to fully believe it as well. And so you may
Mm.
not be able to see it just yet, but there is a lot of people around you that sees it. And that's one of my favorite things to do with them is like, wow, I can't wait until you catch up to what I'm seeing and hearing. But it's there. It's just a matter of just kind of pulling that out of them.
I love that. That's such a great tip. If you can't think of what it is that makes you unique, pick 3 people, whether that's in your professional setting or even in your family, or
Yeah.
even if you have some really close client relationships. What do
That
you love working about? What do you love about working with me? What do you think makes me different? It can be such a vulnerable question to ask, but it's also, I think, one of the most powerful questions you can ask.
Well, it's funny. I didn't prompt this. You would think I would, with me not being very shy, but I didn't prompt this from a client, and it was interesting because I actually thought it was probably one of my weaknesses.
Mm,
And he had shared with me that my sense of humor, which everyone's probably on this line, they're like, she's not really not that funny, but my sense of humor and my tangents is one of the main reasons they love working with me. And I was
Yeah.
like, not my brain. I was like, but no, but to the point because I was like, oh my God, I'm taking us off track. But one thing that I can always lean to is that we go down this journey, so to speak, and we're on these tangents, we're having fun, but yet we still get the job done.
Right.
So I'm very intentional in the beginning of the call is like, we're going over A, B, and C, and and X, Y, and Z are going to be the deliverers. Do you want to make sure you get out of anything today? And they'll share with me. And I have this list right in front of me, and we just go. And I kid you not, it always gets done in that 30 to 60 minutes. But somehow we're on this tangent of like talking about God knows what. But so it's interesting. Like I didn't realize that was my unique thing that of why people want to work with me, or at least maybe stayed with me. That would be, it's funny. I had a phone interview or a phone prospect with a client, and he was also in a very professional setting, which that is beyond me, by the way. I thought I would have worked with people in the fitness industry or in the therapy world. And so, anyways, we were on a phone. It was prospects call, and I had said like just a really awful dad joke and like a pun intended type thing because he works like in a landscaping services, and he said and I was like, yeah, the landscape of our work together, and I was like, pun intended, and he didn't laugh, and I was like, ooh, this is not probably going to go over well. And then we had a second prospect call because it made sense, and we were on video. And it just naturally, the bad jokes just come out, and he started laughing. I was like, okay, great. I think we're going to be on the same page.
He's a silent laugher. Right?
Awful. It's awful. Yeah, exactly. He's like a silent laugher.
Oh, that's hilarious. I also love what I love about you too is, the bad one joke that seemed to fall flat didn't deter you, right?
No, it's like, and I sometimes like triple down on it too. It's like, let it go. Oh, I'd be the worst comedian.
Oh, Kim. Yeah. Well, I feel like I have learned so much just from chatting with you for 30 minutes or so. I've so enjoyed this conversation. One question that I often like to end with is, based on everything that we've talked about so far, we've talked about branding, we've talked about differentiating yourself, we've talked about content strategies. Is there anything in the course of our conversation that, I haven't asked you about yet that you think is pertinent or that you'd love to just circle back to before we wrap up?
It sounds silly, and I think it comes from that brand clarity session, especially with people in the financial industry. They are already successful in their own right. So one thing I like to really figure out is like, why even bother? Why even bother having a content strategy? Why even bother putting yourself out there digitally? Why even bother having an up-to-date website or anything like that? It's like, what, like, I have this framework where I use it for content, but I kind of just use it for life in general. It's like, what, why, how? So it's like, okay, what are we talking about? Okay, we're talking about creating a plan or a strategy for your business. Why is it important to, sometimes I say on the person on the other end, especially if they're writing content, like, why is it important to you? And then the third is the how, like, how can someone take something away from it? How are you going to take something away from this? And because it really, and I know, like Simon Sinek says, like, start with why. And I know it's very cliche and like it may be a really hard question to ask and maybe too deep, etc. But I really like to figure out why this matters to them. And I was just on a call, like I was sharing before, on a supporting advisor call. And one of the things was I wanted to give them from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being LinkedIn who, like I never even heard of her. And then linked, like 5 being, oh my gosh, I'm doing backflips. I love, posting content, etc. And one person put 0, very much really appreciated that person. But the reason I did that was like, because at the end of the day, it feels relatively trivial if we don't have a meaning behind it. And one of their whys could be, my advisor told me to be here. Great. Let's start with that. And then can we build? And I shared with them and I said, can we get to, if you're at a 1, can we get to a 2 in the next 30 to 90 days? And it just builds up on a bigger meaning to it. And so I maybe that was probably the question of just why does this matter?
Yeah.
And because we could argue that there's so many people already doing exactly what we're doing out there. There's too much to consume, etc. But there is more of a, I would say, intimate thing to really be able to make the most impact and imprint.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That was such a great kind of cap to our conversation, because I also think it even goes back to the ROI discussion that we were having at the beginning of our conversation. So really appreciate that, Kim. Now, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, I would say the best is going to be my website. So it's Kim Kelty, Kelty as in Tom, Y.com, and then Kim Kelty on LinkedIn. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to both of those places in the show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for this great conversation. And thank you to all of our listeners at the Finance Marketing Podcast as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.